Hello everyone. So, today is a right day because, from tomorrow it'll be super busy with a lot of events. It's like a right spot. I'm glad you guys are here. Quick intro. This is Yash, myself Yash. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Surge.build. So what we are building, so it's a meta layer on Bitcoin so that teams can build a lot of their innovations on it. So the keynote today is about, what are some myths around, Bitcoin scaling. I'm sure you would have noticed there's a lot of projects, a lot of teams building on Bitcoin. Even people feel like it's just a, hype train and people are just jumping on it because it's an opportunity window. But I think there is a lot more to it. If you really spend time and learn about these ecosystems, there's a lot of stuff. So I'm just trying to probably highlight certain myths that are around it, probably give you more understanding of what Bitcoin is. And even the modularity side, how it can be actually an ultimate settlement layer, right? So, okay. So a quick preview on the agenda. So first, I'll talk about why we have to scale Bitcoin, the scalability, why Bitcoin scalability matters. And then, of course, what are some myths around Bitcoin scaling, what it is and how it's happening. And then I will also introduce a little bit about what we are doing at Surge and how it's actually solving the Bitcoin scaling. So to begin with, what is a blockchain, right? Blockchain is just a decentralized ledger. Of course, there are three desirable properties, which is decentralization, security, and scalability. But if you look at the decentralization problem, if you really want to make a good blockchain, you have to give up on either of it, right? So either it will be decentralized and secure, but you will lose on the scalability. If you go other way, you will end up losing one. That's very popularly known as the blockchain trilemma, right? So I think that's pretty much same with Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin is pretty decentralized and secure L1 that is out there. That's, I think, the toppest. But it suffers scalability, right? So what does scalability look like? It is 5 to 7 TPS, transaction per second. And you can probably do 900K or 1 million transactions per day, right? So on an average, it's been doing 600K. That shows the demand and why Bitcoin is kind of taking the center stage, and that's why there is a lot of interest and surge and people trying to build on it. So even we saw as recently as April 23rd, 2024, we saw I think 920K transactions per day. That's the maximum, right? It's actually hitting the cap. So this kind of triggers, oh, okay, can we scale Bitcoin, right? So that's where you're seeing this whole hype around okay, the different projects coming on board and trying to build. Sorry. Okay, so this is another thing that people, of course, compare. You go and compare with the parallel ecosystem, right? So Bitcoin, the state of Bitcoin been evolving, right? The utility of Bitcoin been evolving. So initially, it kind of started as a P2P, peer-to-peer payment system. And then we saw a store of value, everybody seeing Bitcoin as a digital gold, it has become a norm. And now there is, of course, there's a lot of talk around how can we build a lot of financial instrument or a non-financial use cases on Bitcoin. So if you just build a parallel or a draw parallel with Ethereum, just hypothetically, if you just say, what Ethereum has done, Ethereum, of course, started with this whole idea of, how can we bring decentralized, smart contracts and how can you make it work, build whole DeFi ecosystem on it. So, but Bitcoin has started in a different way, right? So if you look at the cap of Bitcoin is around 1 trillion versus what Ethereum is, but you can see the ratio between DeFi and, when I say DeFi, just I think the primary use case of Ethereum. But if you just take that as an example, you can, in a way, draw a parallel and say, what possibly you can do on Bitcoin. This is an untapped opportunity that, of course, everybody is trying to solve, right? So just giving you a quick preview on what has happened so far, right? So initially the state channels which try to scale the P2P or peer-to-peer payment systems, which is Lightning Network. Lightning Network was pretty popular. It was so expensive to transact on Bitcoin. So now Lightning Network kind of solved it and made it cheaper and easier to do transactions on Bitcoin. So similarly, Stacks came in, back in like again 2017, 2018. They tried to like do a lot of DeFi, but I think at the end of the day it's pretty slow. The block time like confirmation is about 10 minutes. So ultimately it goes back to like, okay, it's as equal as Bitcoin, right? So and then after Taproot and Segway, like which is a major soft forks that happened. So you can see like there is a lot of meta protocols and a lot of tools that are coming in and the products that are building on it. So now actually there is more than like, I think 40 is still a very fair number that we have taken. Like I think it's like 70, 80 teams that are building on Bitcoin today. Like there are like rollups, there are like layer 2, there are a lot of like this DeFi and meta protocols that are built on Bitcoin. So I mean, this is what is actually happening right now, right? So I mean, there's a lot of capital being poured into it. There's a lot of teams that are building on it. So Bitcoin scaling is becoming real, right? So I'll just run you through like certain myths that are there, right? So to begin with, there's only like 4 MB block size. I mean, that's the max you can do on Bitcoin, right? So the way I say it is, initially it was like 1 MB, right? So now with Segway, the segregated witness upgrade, so now it is at 4 MB. I see it as a possible, positive sign. So why? Bitcoin is being stable because it moves at certain speed. Right, you can't, go and change the underlying protocol. I mean, an average, probably a soft fork takes like months to years, right? So it is not like what we see in Ethereum. So that's because we have seen so much in Ethereum, like so much has happened in Ethereum space and other ecosystem. Things changes so fast, but that's not the case with Bitcoin. I think that's the special property of Bitcoin because that brings that stability to Bitcoin, right? Like that Bitcoin is special and decentralized and secure for the same reason that it moves at a certain speed, right? It is not as aggressive as other ecosystem. So the 4 MB block size has got that, highest acceptance within the, the community of like decentralized miners and stuff. Even, I mean, this attempt being done like since 2015, we saw like a lot of hard forks happening. They became themselves a chain. Like you must have heard of Bitcoin Cash. That's just another fork, which ended up becoming a hard fork because they didn't get the enough consensus from all the miners, right? So while this is a myth, I definitely see this as a positive sign. Like things are moving on the Bitcoin side with segregated witness. So now we have a lot more space to play. Like this. I mean, this is like probably the optimal size probably. We will see like, in future there could be like upgrades and, the soft codes that will happen. But so far we strongly feel like, the 4 MB is the like an optimal, thing which kind of keeps the, security and, the whole network in place. So next is the transaction fees will make Bitcoin unusable. But the way we will say it is, I mean, this is evident, right? Like the Bitcoin started, I mean, I'll just give you a little bit of context, right? So in Bitcoin, every 10 minutes when you mine a block, by solving a complex computational problem, so you will be rewarded with Bitcoin. So right now it's about 3.25, right? So every 4 years, that reward is cut to half, right? So now what's the incentive for all these miners to be on network and mine for Bitcoin is the block rewards, right? So the transaction fee is making up to somewhere about 10 to 15% right now, right? And rest of it is block reward, right? So which is the 3.25 right now. So as the halving happens 4 years, like every 4 year, so the transaction fee gonna like catch up, right? So the transaction fee is the only like probably the way they will make a lot of money like down the line, like probably after like 10 years, 15 years. So that's the incentive, right? So I would say it's all about incentives at the end of the day, like for, especially with blockchain and decentralized, because that's how we are keeping everybody intact, right? So while people feel like transaction fee will make Bitcoin unusable, but the way it is, like that's how it is being designed. Like that's how it is been progressing and it's been validating and things are happening, right, on Bitcoin. So the third myth, Bitcoin on-chain scaling alone is sufficient, right? So a lot of people still believe like, as close example is Lightning Network, right? Lightning Network is actually on, we can actually literally call like Lightning Network is a real L2 on Bitcoin. And you can still argue and say, all the other teams who are building probably are not real L2 or rollups or like that, the scaling solutions that are built on it. I mean, the story being this, right? Like any changes that happens on Bitcoin takes time because it has to go through that kind of like rigorous, acceptance and testing and whatnot. So yes, people do believe there is a new thing called OP-CAD, so it's actually a opcode that was disabled back in many years before. So the reason being, it can potentially compromise the whole security part of it, right? This is a huge security risk. So that's why it definitely didn't get that acceptance, and you didn't you didn't end up having that on chain. So I mean, yes, there are bunch of team, there are a lot of ecosystem partners who are trying to make this happen. But the way we see it is we already have enough. We have not scaled anything with whatever we have in the Bitcoin, with what Bitcoin stands for, which is the most decentralized and most secure network. I think this is a myth, but still there are a lot of teams kind of pushing for having this opcodes, or even bringing that scaling on board. I mean, there are different teams having their own stand on how things should be scaled, but we strongly feel you can do a lot more with what is already been done in Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is. So the next, the myth is, layer 2 solutions sacrifice security, right? So this thought comes to mind because there's a definition of what layer 2 is, right? So there are two things, right? So one is you should be able to unilaterally exit a layer 2. When things go wrong with a layer 2, you should be able to exit as a user, right? That's the first criteria. And the second is, does your L1 verifies the layer 2, right? Does it really say that, oh, this is actually a roll-up, or this is actually a layer 2 that is built on it? I think these two things, or again, the layer 1 should also act as a data availability layer for the, layer 1 should act as a data availability layer for the layer 2, right? So now, this has been set as a norm or standard. Again, there are so many variations within layer 2 or rollups, right? So there is optimistic rollups, there are ZK rollups, there are Validium rollups. There's so many different variation of rollups. I think the way I feel it is we have not seen any demand I think the whole demand we have seen is DeFi. People have come, build a lot of protocols, build a lot of these financial primitives on it, but there is a lot more to be done, right? So in that sense, we have still not explored all the possibilities that are out there, in terms of scaling options that are already available. I think ZK rollups is actually close to real on Bitcoin, because that's something being discussed since Nakamoto kind of came up with this whole chain, and there was a lot of discussion in the the forum itself. So the way I feel it is now, with the upgrades that we have, you can actually anchor to Bitcoin security, right? So if you have to reorg the layer 2, you have to reorg the entire Bitcoin, which is incredibly not possible, right? I mean, you have to do a 51% attack to change anything on Bitcoin. So the recent upgrades, in the form of Taproot and SegWit, has given you that capability to actually anchor to Bitcoin. You can actually build a lot of innovations around it, right? The last myth we kind of hear all the time is existing solutions are more theoretical and then market ready. Yes, that's true. You can still argue on this point, but the thing is, the things are moving on Bitcoin ecosystem as well. If you would have heard a very popular chain on Bitcoin called Stacks, right? So that's actually a L2. So they are actually did this Nakamoto upgrade, which is going live, it's gone live, things are shaping up on the Bitcoin side as well. So the way I see it is, I mean, there is a lot of talk on BitVM also, BitVM kind of came up with this whole, approach on how can you make optimistic based, things on Bitcoin, the rollups on Bitcoin. So that's still going on. Yes, there's a lot of work still on paper, but that doesn't mean there's a lot progress being done. Nakamoto would be the closest example that you can take up right now and say, hey, I mean, there's a lot of work being done. I think in next 6 months or a year, you will end up seeing a lot of chains coming out and building on Bitcoin, or using Bitcoin security, or anchoring onto Bitcoin to be the actual L2 and use it as a data availability layer, right? So what we believe at Search is, if everybody starts use this method of inscription or Taproot and SegWit and start building on Bitcoin, it will of course bloat the whole state of, right? So you just have 4 MB, you can't do anything beyond it, right? So this will actually price out the whole innovation you could have actually built on it, right? So why, I mean, I always get this question, right? Like, okay, like you can build a lot of DeFi on Bitcoin, but what else? What else you can build, right? Because we have not seen enough innovation on a non-financial use case in any ecosystem for that matter. Like Ethereum, of course, is champion, is the #1 when it comes to DeFi, and there are a lot of other ecosystem also, and everybody is trying to like kind of, make the block space as cheaper as possible. I think the block space is getting commoditized soon, right? So there'll be so much block space available. And it's a good problem to have, right? Like then Bitcoin will become more valuable. It's like a Gucci of the world, right? So then Bitcoin is more expensive and more, valued for its block space. And this kind of goes back to this point that, like as time evolves, probably like Bitcoin is be seen as more valuable, block space. People would probably like, fight for it, right? So that's how it is valuable, and that's the incentives that will keep this going, like this whole innovation going. So how we are doing it? So Surge is a meta layer that we are building on Bitcoin, right? So how we are doing it? It's a decentralized network, so it's more of a L1. It's a Comet BFT based network. So it has. I'll probably show you. Okay. So we will be using Bitcoin as a settlement layer, right? So all the things will settle on Bitcoin through whatever we have seen through meta protocols and things, and then we'll make it easy for Bitcoin liquidity to move from Bitcoin network, like the BTC to move from Bitcoin network to the L2s or like the protocols that are built on our meta layer, which is Surge. And then, of course, how can you make Bitcoin developer friendly? I think that's one big missing piece today. Like, there are not enough tools, there are not enough protocols or infrastructures that are actually built on Bitcoin who are like native to Bitcoin. We probably call ourselves like, a native Bitcoin meta layer, right? So that's something we are trying to solve, like, the three things, like how can you settle on Bitcoin? How can you like move the liquidity from, Bitcoin to like the layers that are built on us? And then how can you make the whole development like, more of developer friendly? So this is how like probably our architecture looks like. You have Bitcoin, then there's like this L1 that is built on it, which is Surge. It kind of like includes this verifiers, signers, and indexer as a node. They have their own role to play, and then we are like building all this, roll-up development kit. So if somebody want to like build a roll-up on it, so they can use the roll-up development kits. We are also like working with other roll-up frameworks that are out there, and also trying to do our own. And then you have Surge VM, which is more of a ZK VM. So we are collaborating with another partner to like build this. So there are other protocols and meta protocols also build on it. So because the possibility is so big, we see this as like a way to like scale Bitcoin and build a healthy ecosystem on it, right, or around it. So yeah, so this is about Surge. So we have a booth, right here. The team is here, so please feel free to come over, and we would love to share more of what's happening at Surge. Thank you.